Vecna dying might actually be the worst thing that could happen to Hawkins. Everyone's so focused on defeating this skeleton-faced monster that they're missing the bigger picture. Stay with me now as I tell you everything you need to know about what could happen when Vecna falls and why the group might regret ever trying to stop him in the first place. The Mind Flayer is the real puppet master. Let's start with the big one. Matt Duffer literally said the question of who's really in control, Vecna or the Mind Flayer, will be answered in the final episode. That's huge because it means the show has been deliberately keeping this ambiguous. And based on everything from the first Shadow play, which the Duffers confirmed is canon, the answer is looking pretty grim. Young Henry Creel went into that Nevada cave and got transported to Dimension X. While he was there, the Mind Flayer flayed him. It infected him with particles, it changed his blood, it gave him powers. But here's the key part. The Mind Flayer didn't just give Henry abilities and send him on his way. It possessed him, it influenced him, it made him kill his mother and sister. Henry thought he was in control of his actions, but he wasn't. The Mind Flayer was pulling the strings the entire time. In Season 4, Vecna told Eleven that he shaped the Mind Flayer into that spider form. He said he found it as dormant particles and gave it purpose. But what if Vecna's lying? What if he genuinely believes he's in control because that's what the Mind Flayer wants him to believe? Think about it like a parasite that makes its host think everything's fine while it slowly takes over. The Mind Flayer is ancient. It's existed in Dimension X for who knows how long. Why would it suddenly bow to some human kid who showed up in its dimension? The play makes this even clearer. The Mind Flayer spoke to Henry using the voices of his family members, it studied him, it manipulated him, it promised him power if he'd just let it in. And Henry did. He thought he was making a deal with something he could control, but you can't control something that's been alive for centuries or millennia longer than you. Here's where it gets terrifying. If the Mind Flayer is the one really in charge, then everything Vecna's done has been the Mind Flayer's plan. Opening gates, kidnapping kids, creating the hive mind. All of it has been building toward the Mind Flayer's endgame, and if Vecna dies, the Mind Flayer doesn't die with him, it just finds a new puppet, and the next puppet might be worse. Dimension X is still out there. Okay, so here's something most people don't understand. Dimension X and the Upside Down are not the same place. This is critical. Dimension X is where Vecna was sent in 1979 when Eleven banished him. It's this alien hellscape with floating rocks, scorched skies, and the Mind Flayer existing as a cloud of particles. Vecna spent years wandering around there, encountering demogorgons and other creatures. But the Upside Down didn't exist until 1983, when Eleven made psychic contact with a demogorgon on November 6th, 1983, the gate opened and the Upside Down was created. It's a mirror copy of Hawkins, frozen on that exact date, infected with vines and monsters from Dimension X, but Dimension X itself is still out there. It's the source. It's where everything came from. Think about what this means. Even if the group closes all the gates to the Upside Down, even if they destroy Vecna and collapse that whole dimension, Dimension X remains. And the Mind Flayer lives in Dimension X. It's not dependent on Vecna or the Upside Down to survive. It existed long before either of those things, and it'll exist long after. The Duffers promised to reveal the true nature of the Upside Down and Dimension X in Season 5. Ross Duffer said it's something they've been planning for 10 years. That tells you the reveal is going to recontextualize everything, and the most logical reveal is that Dimension X is the real threat. The Upside Down has always been just a staging ground, a transitional space between Dimension X and the real world. Destroying it doesn't solve the problem, it just removes the buffer zone. What if killing Vecna and collapsing the Upside Down creates a direct connection between Hawkins and Dimension X? What if the Upside Down has actually been protecting the real world from something worse, and removing it tears down the only barrier that's been keeping Dimension X at bay? That would be catastrophic. The 12 kids are a permanent gateway. Vecna's been kidnapping kids and holding them in spires, pumping them full of Upside Down particles, and connecting them to the hive mind. He needs 12 of them to complete his plan. But here's what nobody's talking about. What if those kids aren't just vessels or anchors? What if they're permanent gateways? Think about it. Well, Byers has been connected to the Upside Down since 1983. He got infected with Mind Flayer particles when Vecna took him. Even after he was rescued, even after the Mind Flayer was exorcised from his body, Will still has particles inside him. He can sense when the Upside Down is active. He can feel Vecna's emotions. And now he has powers because of that connection. Will's been a living gateway for 8 years. What if Vecna is doing the same thing to the 12 kids but on a bigger scale? He's not just possessing them. He's transforming their biology. He's making them into permanent bridges between dimensions. And if that transformation is complete, killing Vecna won't close those bridges. The kids will still be connected. Max is the proof of concept. She's been trapped in Vecna's mind for 20 months. Her body is in a coma in the real world, but her consciousness is in his mindscape. Vecna died, or at least was seriously injured at the end of Season 4, but Max didn't wake up. The connection persisted. That tells us Vecna's influence doesn't end just because he's gone. The links he creates are permanent unless they're actively severed. Now multiply that by 12. 12 kids. paths, all acting as doorways, all connected to the hive mind. Even if Vecna's dead, the Mind Flayer could use those kids to maintain access to the real world. It wouldn't need Vecna anymore. The infrastructure is already in place. And here's the really dark part. The kids might not even realize they're being used. They could wake up thinking they're free, while the Mind Flayer quietly puppets them from Dimension X. Will is the ultimate failsafe. Speaking of Will, let's talk about why his powers unlocking might be part of a larger plan. In episode 4, Will used abilities that looked exactly like Vecna's. He controlled Demogorgons. He snapped their limbs by moving his arms. He tapped into the hive mind and weaponized it. That's incredible, right? Will's finally strong enough to fight back, but here's the problem. Will's powers come from the hive mind. He can only access them when he's close to it, and the hive mind is controlled by whoever's at the top of the pyramid. Right now, that's Vecna. But if Vecna dies and the Mind Flayer takes direct control, then Will's connection shifts to the Mind Flayer, and the Mind Flayer has way more experience manipulating people through that connection than Vecna ever did. Remember season 2? The Mind Flayer possessed Will. It used him as a spy. It made him lead Hopper and the soldiers into a trap. Will didn't want to do those things, but he couldn't stop himself. The Mind Flayer's influence was too strong, and that was years ago, when the connection was weaker. Now Will's powers are amplified. His link to the hive mind is stronger than ever. If the Mind Flayer decides to take control of Will again, he might not be able to resist. Noah Schnapp has been saying for months that this story started with Will, and it's going to end with Will. That phrasing is ominous. It could mean Will's the hero who saves everyone, or it could mean Will becomes the final threat that the group has to stop. If the Mind Flayer possesses Will and uses his powers, the group would be forced to fight their best friend. That's the kind of twisted, heartbreaking ending the Duffers love. And here's why this makes sense thematically. Will's been sidelined for most of the series. He was the victim in season 1. He was possessed in season 2. He dealt with trauma in seasons 3 and 4. Season 5 is finally giving him powers and agency. But what if that agency is an illusion? What if the Mind Flayer has been grooming Will for 8 years, slowly strengthening their connection, waiting for the moment when Will would be powerful enough to serve as its new vessel? Killing Vecna would remove the one obstacle preventing the Mind Flayer from claiming Will completely. The group might have to choose between two evils. Here's the scenario nobody wants to think about. What if Vecna's been holding something back? What if he's the only thing keeping a worse evil at bay, and killing him releases it? In Dungeons & Dragons, which the show pulls from constantly, Vecna is powerful, but he's not the strongest villain. There are entities way more dangerous, like Asmodeus or Tiamat or other demon lords. Will's painting in season 4 showed a 3-headed red dragon. That's not Vecna, that's something else. Something bigger. The final shot of the season 5 trailer showed a massive creature with horns and claws that doesn't look like Vecna. It looks like an entirely new monster. Fans think it might be Asmodeus, a demon from D&D lore, who's known for manipulation and treachery. Asmodeus is the kind of villain who'd use someone like Vecna as a pawn, letting him do all the work of opening gates and weakening the barriers between dimensions, and then swooping in at the last second to claim the prize. What if Vecna knows about this? What if he's been trying to stop the real threat from entering the world, and his method was to control the Upside Down first? That would make him an anti-hero, someone doing terrible things for a justifiable reason. And if the group kills him before understanding the full situation, they'd accidentally unleash something far worse. This would force the group into an impossible choice. Do they let Vecna live and continue his reign of terror, or do they kill him and risk releasing whatever he's been holding back? There's no good answer. Either way, people suffer. That's the kind of moral complexity the Duffers have been building towards since season 1. Time unraveling makes everything worse. Netflix's official description for season 5 mentions time itself unraveling. That's not poetic language, that's a plot point, and if time starts breaking down, killing Vecna could accelerate it. The Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. That date keeps showing up across multiple eras. It appeared on the Oklahoma play flyer from 1959 that Max found in Henry's memories. It's the date Will was taken. It's the date the Upside Down was created. November 6th is clearly a nexus point, a moment when something fundamental about time got damaged. Scott Clark gave a lecture in episode 1 about Einstein-Rosen bridges, which are theoretical wormholes. His diagram looked exactly like the wall surrounding the Upside Down. What if the Upside Down isn't just a dimension? What if it's a wormhole connecting multiple points in time? What if Vecna's been using it to manipulate events across decades, ensuring November 6th happens the way he needs it to? If Vecna dies and the Upside Down collapses, that wormhole destabilizes. Time stops being linear, past, present, and future start bleeding into each other. The group might find themselves themselves experiencing events out of order. They might see their own deaths before they happen. They might witness the creation of the Upside Down from the inside. Reality itself becomes unreliable, and here's the really scary part. If time is unraveling, then cause and effect break down. Killing Vecna in the present might erase him from the past, which would mean Will never got taken, which would mean the Upside Down never formed, which would mean 11 never opened the gate, which creates a paradox. The universe would have to resolve that paradox somehow, and the resolution might involve erasing Hawkins entirely, or erasing the kids who've been touched by the Upside Down, or creating a timeline split where both realities exist simultaneously, and the group is trapped between them. 11 might not survive. The final battle. Here's the hard truth. If Vecna's death triggers something worse, 11's gonna be at the center of it. She's the one who sent Vecna to Dimension X in the first place. She's the one who opened the first gate. She's the most powerful person in the group. If something catastrophic happens when Vecna dies, 11's gonna try to fix it, and fixing it might cost her everything. The Duffers originally planned for 11 to sacrifice herself at the end of season 1. She was supposed to close the gate and die in the process. They changed their minds because the show got renewed, but they've said multiple times that the ending brings everything full circle. What if full circle means going back to that original plan? 11 using all her power to close the gates permanently, to seal off Dimension X, to stop the Mind Flayer, and dying in the process would be devastating but thematic. Her whole arc has been about choosing to be a hero even when it's hard, even when it means losing the life she wants with Mike and Hopper and Joyce. If the only way to save Hawkins is for 11 to sacrifice herself, she'd do it. She wouldn't even hesitate. But here's the twist that would make it even worse. What if 11's sacrifice doesn't work? What if she gives everything, pushes herself past her limit, dies closing the gate, and then the Mind Flayer just opens a new one using the 12 kids as anchors? 11 would be gone, and the threat would still be there. The group would have lost their strongest fighter for nothing. That's the kind of cruel, realistic outcome that would hurt way more than a traditional heroic sacrifice. The military makes everything worse. Dr. K and the military have been treating the Upside Down like a containment problem. They built the Max Z, they're using sonic weapons, they're trying to quarantine the infection, but they have no idea what they're dealing with, and their interference is going to escalate everything. In episode 4, Vecna walked through the Max Z and killed soldiers effortlessly. He wasn't even trying. That was just him swatting flies. But what if that attack wasn't random? What if Vecna was testing the military's defenses, figuring out how much of a threat they are? And what if he determined they're strong enough to disrupt his plans but not strong enough to stop him? The military is going to keep attacking. They're going to use bigger weapons. They might even try to nuke the Upside Down, because that's what governments do when they're scared and out of options. And if they detonate something massive near the gates, they could blow them wide open. Instead of sealing the Upside Down, they'd create a permanent merger between dimensions. Or worse, they could accidentally breach Dimension X. The military doesn't know it exists. They think the Upside Down is the source of everything, so they're targeting the wrong dimension. If they punch through the Upside Down and hit Dimension X, they're going to wake up things that have been dormant for centuries. The Mind Flayer might not even be the worst thing living there. There could be other entities, other horrors that make Vecna look like a minor annoyance. And here's the really frustrating part. The kids have been trying to warn the adults for 8 years. They've been saying there are monsters, there's another dimension, the government can't be trusted. And every single time, adults either don't believe them or make the situation worse. Dr. K is the latest in a long line of adults who think they know better, and she's going to cause a catastrophe because she refuses to listen. The aftermath is permanent. Let's say the group manages to kill Vecna. Let's say they close the gates. Let's say they stop the Mind Flayer and save the 12 kids and prevent Dimension X from merging with the real world. Best case scenario, everything works out. But even then, the damage is permanent. Hawkins has been infected. The vines have spread underground. The spores are in the air. People have died. Families have been destroyed. The town's been evacuated. Buildings are ruined. The military's turned the place into a war zone. Even if the supernatural threat ends, Hawkins is never going to recover. It's going to be a ghost town, abandoned and forgotten. And the kids who survived, they're traumatized for life. They've seen things no one should see. They've lost friends. They've killed monsters and watched people they love die. You don't just bounce back from that. Even if they win, they're going to carry those scars forever. Mike might not be able to have a normal relationship with 11 because they're too defined by trauma. Will might never feel safe because he knows what's out there. Dustin's already lost Eddie. Lucas might lose Max. How do you move forward from that? The Duffers have described the ending as melancholy. Not happy, not tragic, but melancholy. That suggests the victory comes with a cost. The group might save the world, but they lose themselves in the process. They might close the gates, but too many people die for it to feel like a win. They might defeat Vecna, but the Mind Flayer remains, waiting in Dimension X for another opportunity. Vecna dying might be the beginning of the end, not the end itself. And when the group realizes what they've unleashed, it might already be too late to stop it.